what Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. told the grand jury versus what he said on YouTube. Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. wants to be a star witness in this Tupac murder trial. But conflicting stories are not going to make that possible. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into some of this straight game.
Life is like the cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy Delray Richardson, Platinum Artist, Platinum Songwriter, Straight Game TV. Thank you for tuning in. Hit the thumbs up button. Also subscribe to the channel if you had not already. And like I always say, if you want to be one of the first people notified when I drop some of this straight game, please do me a favor and click on what appears to be that little bell notification right below this video. I'm going to get right into it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's one thing to say something and be able to keep your story straight. That gains one credibility. You know what I mean? Like I said, person, they said what they said. They never changed their story. Always been believable. Like I said, a very low exaggeration rate, if you will, in saying something, right? But ladies and gentlemen, I want to give you this because the grand jury testimony, I want you to understand that it's been disseminated not only through what the transcripts actually say, but it's been disseminated through other outlets, if you will. Listen to this.
Wright said the feud escalated, with a member of Bad Boy Records pointing a gun at Tupac Shakur at an awards show months before that shooting in Las Vegas. Wright said Keefe D was at that awards show with members of Bad Boy Records. That, coupled with the theft of the death row chain and then the MGM Grand fight, caused things to come to a head that night in September of 1996 in Las Vegas. Prosecutors say it ended with the murder of Tupac Shakur.
Okay. So you heard it being reported that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. talked about a member of Bad Boy pulling a gun on Tupac, if you will, right? This was recently as 2023 in the grand jury being convened and all of those things. Also, you heard Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. also say that Keefe D was also there and allegedly providing security or whatever have you for Bad Boy Records, right?
So at that Soul Train thing, though, Keefe D pulled a gun on you guys?
He had a gun. He never pointed it. That's why he's still here today.
Okay, he showed that he had one.
He showed that he had one. And that's when I kept telling him, hey, don't raise that gun. Don't raise that gun. And then he kept it pointed down, then he just took off and run. And that's when Pop was running up, shoot him.
Oh, that's what Pop was screaming?
Yeah, it was like, yeah.
It also says that it changed the dynamic in what was going on at that particular time changed in relation to what that was. That was part of what the change was. Okay? And so understanding that, if Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. could go to the grand jury and explain the atmosphere and how that one situation, among other situations, made the climate change in the regards to how the situation was being approached, what I was saying to you was, now, if you go to Las Vegas, you understand Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. knew that Keefe D was in Vegas. He knew that Keefe D was at the Soul Train Music Awards. So when he seen them, right, when Suge says there was already a plan to do something to Tupac, right? You understand why that is now? So with Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. having that information, saying that he was present, not only saying it on YouTube, but going in front of the grand jury involved in the murder of Tupac Shakur, the grand jury that was convened to file charges against Keefe D, Now you understand what Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. understood, not because I said so, because this is what he went to explain to the grand jury about what that was. But the only thing that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. didn't admit to or wasn't asked about was the fact that Tupac Shakur fired him. You understand what I'm saying? So because if you're dealing with all of these pertinent parts about what they want to know, and you want to tell, the grand jury, that would be something key that one would want to explain to them in regards to the situation and the climate as to what went on, right? But here's where the conflicting story, and where when one tells one thing to a grand jury and then goes out and admits something different publicly, and you tell 3 different stories, but this main one, because the story now is that one of Biggie's partners, one of his friends, or somebody with a bad boy entourage pulled the gun. When in fact, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. said what? It was who? It was Keefe D. In and around about 9 years ago. So 9 years ago, up until the date of, September 2023, when Keefe D was arrested, right? You got to go back and say, well, when he's testifying in front of the grand jury, he's lying by omission. You understand what I'm saying? So the credibility of Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. gets attacked from that perspective. But not only that, but when Keefe D says that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. was the orchestrator, you got to understand what Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. knew at that particular time. And what he knew is what he was explaining to the grand jury that he knew. If you listen very carefully. This incident at the Soul Train Music Awards, it changed with this incident right here. Okay, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. said Keefe D ran, hid underneath the car, right? So it was not only the situation involving Orlando Anderson, it was a situation that was kind of brewing even before the situation in Las Vegas. So now you could put the 2 and 2 together. You could say, oh, when they got out the car at the Soul Train Music Awards, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. understood, I don't know if Tupac understood at that time, that Keefe D was with Bad Boy, right? So when something was whispered in Tupac's ear, allegedly, right? Or better yet, what Frank Alexander said, right? It automatically, you would see now why Tupac would probably react the way that he reacted. Because C. Gutter did admit that there was a gun, that he pulled the gun. You understand what I'm saying? So now you get the full scope of what it was at that particular time. Now, I don't think that Tupac was right for attacking Orlando, but I don't know what was told to Tupac in his ear. Nobody really understands what that was from that perspective. You see what I'm saying? So, but whatever was said, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. knew the climate, right? He knew what the atmosphere was. Therefore, the security apparatus that was supposed to be around Tupac at that time was supposed to be real high. Given what Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. said that he knew. I'm not talking about anything else. In knowing all of this, then you go back to saying, well, why wasn't security higher on Tupac? Why didn't he do what Suge Knight asked him to do when he said send more security for Tupac? Because Reggie knew the atmosphere. He knew that Keefe D was there. He knew it, right? And so, perhaps could Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. had been scared from that perspective? You know what I mean? And not wanting to be there, right? And then also removing the security off of Tupac. Michael Moore, namely because Michael Moore refused to relinquish his gun. But we heard what Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. said in reference to Keefe D being the one with the gun and Tupac allegedly telling him to shoot him as Keefe D was running away. We heard that. But that's not what he told the grand jury. He told the grand jury that Bad Boy's, one of the people in Bad Boy's entourage pulled the gun. So who was it? And how could Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. naming Keefe D, what gang he was from and all of that at one time get that mixed up with somebody he didn't even know at that particular time, which was somebody in Bad Boy's entourage? You see it? So Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. and wanting to be intricately involved in this murder trial, right, has gave so many conflicting stories. You know, if they're looking for evidence to present and to basically debunk what he's saying, I mean, it's crazy, because this is the reason why Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. gets so mad when the truth is told, because he wants the lie to prevail, in which it can't under the circumstances. See, you got to understand, Keefe D has said enough to basically incriminate himself. You know what I mean? He didn't need no help. Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. didn't need to go and tell the grand jury anything. From the perspective that they were, you know what I mean? They were looking for somebody to say anything from that perspective. Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. really offered nothing new, right? But what he did was he's offered statements in which, if you're not paying attention, you would take to be as truth and fact. But if you did the research basically behind the history of what he's been saying, he's offered up conflicting statements, misrepresentations, and simple lies, if you will. So him telling the grand jury and explaining to the grand jury about all of these other things and knowing the climate and everything like that, the question that one hasn't answered, well, if you were head of security, right, and knowing that Tupac had fired him as his personal security, and that was for Reggie, right? That was for Reggie. It had Reggie's name in particular on that fax, right? That was for him. Then when it came to Las Vegas, like 3 days before, when they were in New York, and you seen Michael Moore and a few other security guards with the earpieces in, right? And the other apparatus, and they were around Tupac, as well as Tupac having his own walkie-talkie, right? Why wasn't that same security, that level of security applied in Las Vegas, knowing what Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. claiming that he knew in regards to the Soul Train Music Awards and the gun being pulled, in regards to the hit 'em up situation and all of that, but more importantly, the Soul Train Music situation where he claims that guns were brandished. You understand that? Why didn't he have more security? 3 days before, New York security was tight, tighter than Fort Knox. But in Las Vegas, it was just Frank running around with him. Frank no radio, Frank no earpiece, Frank no telephone, Frank no cell phone, Frank no nothing. Right? Come on, y'all. Come on. You got to understand, and like I said, when you talk about the legal aspect, going and testifying in front of a grand jury is one thing. And then getting on this social media apparatus known as YouTube and saying these other things are totally another. So I want you to pay attention to that as this, debacle wears on, if you will. You know what I mean? A lot of people not really understanding, when somebody explaining, hey, but it escalated. So if it escalated and he claimed that he was, defending Tupac and he, don't pull a gun and Tupac said shoot him, which didn't happen, If he was alleging that then why wouldn't he basically have the security upped in Las Vegas, knowing the type of environment that Las Vegas is, knowing that behind the scenes he was working to get Michael Moore off of Tupac, knowing that behind the scenes that he had already been informed that they couldn't carry guns, or he informed them not to carry guns. He knew all of this information, right? So like I said, when I tell you what I've been telling you guys for the past couple of years, that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. is complicit in the death of Tupac Shakur by the way of negligence, based on the foreknowledge of what he had, based on the fact that he didn't provide adequate security, based on the fact through causation, based on the fact that he didn't adhere to what his boss told him to do, send more security. He didn't do none of those things. And like I said, that recently Suge Knight, allegedly admitted that, yeah, that's what happened. But we didn't even need that from Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. to come back and try to get Suge to double back, try to record his conversation, and hopefully that Suge would walk that back. We heard what Suge Knight said originally when he made the first original statement. And that first original statement was,
yeah. And that's why, like I said, I had two of the toughest guys for him, and Reggie pulled them off of me. And after it happened, I told him to send 5 guys from the club to there, and they never said nobody.
your boy Delray, straight gang.